Hey, hello, welcome to Advanced Algebra 2. Here we're talking about, oh man, this is going to be awesome. We have these systems of equations, and they need to be solved, and we're going to have to learn to use a new method to do it. This is basically elimination all over again, but done in such more painstaking detail. There's some awesomeness behind what's going on, but for a while, you're probably just going to be overrun with the tedious nature of what's going on. Let's get started. Hey, here we got example 1. We've got a system of equations, got x's and y's, so it's two lines crossing. There's a point somewhere in all of this. So we'll go ahead and write a matrix. It's what's called an augmented matrix. The first line there is 3, 7, 54, and that comes exactly from the coefficients along with the constant on the end. And then the second line is 5 to 32, and that comes from the coefficients of the second line with the constant on the end. A matrix is basically like a rectangle of numbers, or I guess conceivably other symbols. And doing matrices has been often de-emphasized, meaning, unemphasized a lot lately in math, which is fine. But unfortunately, that means when we do this thing called an augmented matrix, which really means a matrix made bigger, you're kind of wondering what the whole point of a matrix was to begin with. And you don't have the background to know, but just basically know that as much as I can tell you about the matrix, it's a big rectangle of numbers. Setting it up like this is always going to be the same. Now, the goal is to have the ones in the right spot and the zeros in the other spots, and you'll see as we go along. First order of business is to get a 1 where that 3 is, so we can have it as 1x. We're going to do that by taking the first row, which is what I called R1, and multiplying it by 1/3, and then sticking the answer back in R1. So 1/3 R1 means multiply the first row by 1/3, and then the arrow R1 means put your answer to that back in the first row. So if you multiply the first row by 1/3, it's 1, and then 7/3, and then 18. And according to this set of instructions, nothing happened to the second row, so I'm just rewriting the numbers exactly. Okay, next order of business would be to take that 5 that you see below the 1 and turn that into a 0. The way to do this is by combining the two rows together. This is basically just like elimination with the variables. We're going to go ahead and take the first row and multiply it by -5, add it to the second row, stick our answer in the second row. Now you'll see this is sort of why we bothered to make a 1 to begin with, because now it's really obvious what you have to multiply by. Take that first row, multiply it by -5, boom, stick it in the second row. So the first row here doesn't change. You might say, wait, you said you're multiplying by -5. That's true, but that's just part of making the new second row. So the first row itself doesn't change. Now, to make the second row, we take that 1, multiply it by -5, and then add it to 5, you get 0. Take the 7/3, multiply it by -5, it's kind of tedious, and then add it to 2, and you get -29/3. And take the 18, multiply it by -5, and add it to 32, and you'll end up with -58. Okay, now the left column, meaning that 1 and the 0 right here, boom, that's all taken care of. That's exactly what I need it to be at the end, and hopefully you'll see why at the very end here. So we're kind of done with that. So moving forward, we're now going to focus on the next column, and we're going to make the next spot, which is where the y's are in this column. Ew, that's kind of ugly, sorry, there, to that number to turn into a 1. And that might seem extremely strange, but it's actually not that bad. All you do is you multiply it by the reciprocal. So we're going to go ahead and take that second row and multiply it by -3/29, and stick our answer back in the second row. So to do that, well, the first row stays the same, so I'm just rewriting it Nothing substantial has happened here. And on the second row, well, 0 times negative 3/29 is still 0. And then negative 29 thirds times negative 3 over 29 is 1. And then negative 58 times negative 3 over 29 is 6. So we're really close, because now we've got a 1 down in the bottom right dish corner, at least before the strange line. Okay, one last bit of business to do, which is we want to take this 7/3 and make it into a 0. And to do that, well, we'll just go ahead and take our second row, take our second row and multiply it by negative 7/3. Add it to the first row, and stick our answer in the first row. Doing that exposes basically how awesome we are. But first, notice that the second row didn't really change. Again, you might be thinking, wait a minute, you said you were going to multiply it by negative 7/3, and I am, but only as part of making our new first row. Okay, now, when we do it in the first row, that 0 that we have in the bottom left corner is great, because that doesn't ruin the 1. If we take the 0, we multiply it by negative 7/3, it's still 0, add it to the 1, boom, 1. Brilliant. Okay, now, take the 1, multiply by negative 7/3, and add it to the 7/3, and we have 0. And then 6 times negative 7/3 is like negative 14, plus 18 is 4. And then, boom, we've got our finished matrix, and the top row now means 1x and 0y is 4. Which basically means x is 4. In fact, not even basically, it means x is 4. The second row means 0x plus 1y equals 6. Okay, so that means y is 6. Oh, okay, so we're done. The answer is 4 comma 6. Now this is absolutely positively a longer method than elimination that you've learned in Algebra 1 and kind of reviewed here with me. However, you gotta trust me that what we're doing here, where we're just writing the numbers, not using the variables, and kind of developing a systematic system, this is great, because it really scales nicely when we have larger and larger systems of equations to worry about. What's that you say? Oh yes, larger systems of equations to worry about. Okay, now these become just really tricky, and they can become extremely frustrating. In fact, as I was doing this example 2 on the iPad, I made a mistake. It took me about 45 minutes to fix. You shouldn't have so much trouble on your pencil and paper situation, but just a tiny arithmetic error can just be devastating. So please don't be shy about using your calculator as we go along. First order of business, just writing the matrix, which means writing the coefficients and the constants in order: x, y, z, line for the equal sign, and then constant, x, y, z, line, constant. And then I did a little fun color-coded highlighting for you here, but nothing terribly new. So if you understood what I did in example 1, probably understand how this works out now. If you didn't there, hopefully it'll start to make some bit of sense slowly. Now, as we move forward, I don't know if you remember in the last example, we did the first column first, and we're going to do that today too here. Get comfortable, this one is going to take a while. The first order of business is to turn that first number, the top left number, which is currently this 3, we got to turn that into a 1. So, to do that, we're going to go ahead, I'll leave it circled just so you know what we're working on. We're going to take the first row and multiply it by a third. Now, one thing that's immediately going to strike you as not awesome is when we do that and we stick the answer back in the first row, like the arrow says, it's going to create a whole bunch of fractions. And the answer is, yeah, it is. Have some faith that sometimes the fractions will end up going away. And if they don't go away, that's just because your mean math teacher wants there to be fractions in the answers. Okay, so 3 became 1, negative 2 became negative 2/3, 5 became 5/3, negative 17 became negative 17/3. That's the new first row. The second and the third rows are the same. Okay, now the next order of business is to turn this 2 right below the 1 into a 0, which is perhaps why I circled it, I guess. Anyway, so you're going to take the first row. There's actually lots of ways you can do this, but there's one system you want to get down, and I know it's annoying with the fractions, but learning the system, just scale up, and it works good for more and more complex situations. So you want to take the first row and multiply it by -2. And then, if you add it to the second row and stick your answer in the second row, you're good to go. So, for example here, we can go ahead and rewrite the first row. It didn't change. Again, remember that even though I'm going to multiply it, that's only for making the new second row. The actual first row stays the same. Same thing with the third row, although there's less opportunity for confusion there because nobody ever threatened to do anything with the third row yet, at least. Now, to make the new second row, column by column. So you take the 1 times -2, which is -2, add it to the 2, and you get a 0. Take -2/3 times -2, which is like 4/3, and add to 4. Oh, yeah, use a calculator. Just use a calculator to get the numbers right. So remember, each of the first row numbers is multiplied by -2, then added to the old second row number to make the new second row number. Okay. Now, the next goal is to turn this 5 into a 0. Okay, so to do that, really need to take that first row again and multiply it by -5, then add it to the third row, and then put that answer in the third row. Okay, so to do that, the first row stays the same. Again, I mean the actual first row. And then the second row also stays the same. Nobody's threatening to do anything with the second row. And then the third row, okay, so remember we take the first row times -5 and add it to the third row. So 1 times -5 plus 5 is 0. -2/3 times -5 is like 10/3 plus -6 is -8/3. And then etc., etc. 5/3 times -5 is -25/3, and -7, which is itself -21/3 is -46/3, and -17/3 times -5 is 54/3 plus 7, which is itself 49/3, becomes 106. Okay, it's a lot to have happen right here. Okay, now, I misspoke. -17/3 times -5 is obviously 85/3. I don't know what I was thinking. Okay, anyway, that makes our new equation. Now, our next goal is to take this 16/3 right here and turn that into a 1. So to do that, we need to take the second row and multiply it by the reciprocal of what we already see, which means we need to multiply it by 3/16. And just go ahead and stick our answer back in the second row. This is just like multiplying an equation by a number, just to make all the fractions look different. So the first row doesn't change. It stays the same. And the third row also doesn't change. It stays the same. And the second row, let's see, 0 times 3/16 is 0. 16/3 times 3/16 is 1, which is good. That's what we wanted. And then kind of as you work your way through the numbers, you'll get a new second row. Now, excuse me, I got excited and got started, but our next goal, we're almost halfway done here. Our next goal is to take this -2/3 and turn it into a 0. So now that we did the first column, made 1, 0, 0, the second column, we made the 1, then you want to make the zeros around it. So go ahead and take the second row times 2/3, and if you add it to the first row and stick it in the first row, you'll have a new success story. So go ahead and rewrite the second row because it's not changing. Again, we're going to use it, but it's not going to actually change the second row. Rewrite the third row because nobody's going anywhere near that right now. Although if you look at those fractions, you probably hope somebody would soon. And we will. Okay, the first row. So, oops, by the way, I see I made a mistake. But it's probably something that is boring and you already missed. Shucks. That's a 1 right here. And that's an ugly one. That's a 1 with flair, I guess. So that's our new first row. And we have that 0 where we want it. Our next goal is to make a 0 below the 1 in the second column. It doesn't actually matter if you do the first row 0 first or the third row 0 first. I just kind of go in order. Tedious, but parts of life are tedious. So to do that, go ahead and take the second row, multiply it by 8/3. And if you add that to the third row and stick your answer in the third row, then that'll be taken care of. So, excuse me, here we go. The first row doesn't change. Notice that mistake I had in the first row also doesn't change. I'll fix that in a second. The second row itself doesn't actually change either. Remember, we're going to use that to change the third row, but the second row itself doesn't change. Okay, before we continue on to the exciting third row, let me fix my brief error here in the first row. Sorry about that. This one doesn't have as much flair, which is probably even better. Okay, back to where we were. Now, to make the third row, what's great is it keeps a 0 in the first column, because you're like multiplying 0 by numbers and adding zeros and bleh. Now you've made a 0 in the second column, and we still have fractions. But fear not, brave toaster, because we are about to start to solve this problem. We've taken care of the first column entirely. We've got total success down here, 1, 0, 0. We've taken care of the second column entirely. Total success there, 0, 1, 0. Last column, and this is new for you, I know, is to grab the third column, and hopefully you can see, just kind of in a general diagonal tic-tac-toe sense, that you want to make that a 1. I once lost a bet to a student about tic-tac-toe. But anyway, so take that negative 37/2, you want to make it a 1, and the way to do that is to multiply the third row by the reciprocal. So multiply the third row by negative 2/37, and just go ahead and stick that answer in the third row. So as we do this, then the first and the second rows won't change. You'll notice I carried forward that same mistake in the first row, which I'll fix momentarily here. By the way, this was not the mistake I mentioned earlier that took me many, many, many minutes to figure out where my arithmetic was. It wasn't between a 0 and a 1. So there we go. That one is, I don't know, a little more European than the others perhaps. Now, to make the third row, go ahead and take the old third row and multiply it by apparently negative 2/37. Well, I'll just use a calculator. So, hey, 0, I like that. Hey, 0, I like that. 1. No, that's even better. Negative 3, that's almost a friendly number. Okay, now, we're out of space on the screen. I need to get a new screen of space to continue on. So, I beg your forgiveness here. I'm going to do more, so don't write ... yet. Cat named ... once. But anyway, here we go. This isn't exciting. Don't write this down. This is just the exact same thing as what you had last time. Although, oddly, I stopped making the mistake with the top left corner at this point. But whatever. This is the exact same thing you had just last time. So don't write it down again unless you really like to write it down. There we go. Okay. Now, we've got the first column entirely taken care of. Remember, we've got the second column entirely taken care of. And we've got this little one here, all happy style. Now, the next order of business I would recommend is to go ahead and make a 0 up above the 1. So if you want to do that, go ahead and just take that third row with that 1 right there, multiply it by negative 7/8, add it to the first row, go ahead and stick your answer in the first row. Now you might say, wait a minute, you're going to ruin my 1. And the answer is, no, we're not. Because we have a 0 and the other is 0, we're not going to ruin the first row's precious 1. We're not going to ruin the first row's precious 0. And I'm just saying things to take up time while I slowly rewrite the second and the third rows because nothing has changed for them. Okay, now we're using the third row multiplied by negative 7/8. So 0 times negative 7/8 plus 1 is 1. Okay, and then 0, 0, 0. Oh my gosh, 0, 2. Oh, this is almost pleasant. Okay, one last piece of business, and gosh, I hope you know what it is by now, but maybe you're just really tired of hearing my voice. That has got to turn into a 0. Okay, so my recommendation to make that happen would be to take the third row and multiply it by 19/16 and add it to the second row and stick your answer in the second row. And if you do that, I'm telling you, well, first of all, the first row doesn't change. And the third row doesn't change. Now, for the second row, we're going to go zoom and a 1, and it ends up being a 0 and a 4. After all that time with all those fractions, we have our answer. It's 2, 4, negative 3, because we have 1x equals 2, 1y equals 4, and 1z equals negative 3. 2, 4, negative 3. Happiness abounds. Now, the only thing that might be unhappy now is the fact that there's still example 3 on your paper. Well, I'm going to tell you something. Example 2 was too much fun. More fun than I remembered. So we're going to go ahead and do example 3 in class. So please come back to class with examples 1 and 2 done. We'll do example 3 in class. It's probably best if you don't write "we will do" in class on your paper, because then you've taken up some space. But yeah, whatever. And then, if you're just chomping at the bit, you can get started on this a little bit early. It wouldn't be a bad idea, to be honest, especially some of the shorter ones, the ones on page 145. If you wanted to start those early, they would give you a chance to see for yourself what you can piece together and kind of what you need to focus in on. So I actually do recommend that you try to start a couple of them, if possible. I won't be checking you, but it will likely make your focus much more helpful for yourself in class. Anyway, thank you for watching. If you're able to form any kind of question out of the insanity that just happened on the screen, please don't hesitate to let me know. And have a good day.